Okay. All right.
Whoa.
Are we,
I'm going to say, ready? This is your chance. Can you sing the opening song, please?
You really?
Yes.
You do not want to hear me sing.
That would be great. Let's do it. Ready? Ready? Do you remember that when you open the door? So it starts. Okay, ready? Ready? Go.
Are you going to sing with
do
me?
it.
Or
No, sing
okay.
it. Ready? When you open.
Wait.
You go.
Okay.
I'll be the boom, do do do, doom. Here it comes. Do, do. Ready? Do do do. 2, 3.
When you open the door for someone else,
Woo! Sing it, Bob.
they don't thank you for
That's right.
helping them out.
They never thank you.
Keep a smile upon your face.
Here we go.
We are not putting this on podcast.
This has to show up. Seriously.
No, sorry.
Yes. Oh my God.
Darn it. I didn't push record yet.
No,
Let me go push
I see that
record.
red thing going. Listen, this will get you back for all the interrupting reviews. This deserves to be heard, okay? And good for you. I'm. You know what? There we go. There we go.
Okay.
Woo!
Okay, now let's cue the real music at the start of the podcast.
You were brave. Very brave.
When you open the door for somebody else.
Welcome in, everybody. Is it your
Welcome
turn?
in. Okay. Welcome in. Welcome in. Welcome back. Welcome to you. All of you. Yes, you. I'm talking to you. You're like, me? Me? Is she talking to me? Yes, you. You. Raise your hand loud and proud. Like, yes, you are part of our group. You're part of our circle.
And I apologize for all of you who just had to endure that little pre-show banter.
Was it the dying cat? Is that what it was?
She made me do it.
Okay, so welcome everybody to an episode that we're going to discuss the FDA and how it controls the media, which was an interesting article recently out.
Yeah.
And why does that relate to what we're talking about? You guys already know this. You guys are critical thinkers. You can see past the specificity of the topic and look broader and see how, well, if the FDA is controlling one thing over here, why is it not also controlling journalism about vaccines? And so that's something to pay attention to. But first, how are you? How are you, Dr. Bob?
Good. You know, the office
Good-ish.
is busy. I mean, the office is busy, and I don't know, when it's like a busy long day, I get tired, and I guess when you yeah, that's what Cheryl says. Cheryl's like, I'll text her, I'm like, oh gosh, I'm having such a long day, and she's like, it's called work.
Yeah. Yeah, Cheryl. You know what? That's right, Cheryl. That's right. I'm glad she keeps you in check. It is important.
No, but then she texts me like little heart signs, or I appreciate you.
She's just
working.
trying to lessen the blow.
Yeah, but I mean, when you're self-employed, I guess it's good to be busy, because when you're not busy, it's you don't get paid.
And that's always how it works. Like
yeah.
I've always worked in jobs where it was like, if you show up, you're getting paid, and if you don't show up, I've never had a salary job. I've always had jobs based on your performance of, your actual production, like whether that was teaching, whether that was personal training, nutrition, like stuff that I used to do. It's like, you show up, you get paid. And it's a funny double standard with that, right? Because on one hand, you have to get paid. You can only get paid if you show up. And on the other hand, if you don't show up, you're thinking, I need a break. I want some time for me. You feel guilty that you're not getting paid. And then when you're working too much, you feel guilty that you're not taking time for yourself. And it seems like there's really no place that you go, I'm totally happy right where I am. Like, it's either I'm working so much, which is great for the money, but then you're saying, God, I really need some time. Or I'm taking time for myself, but then you're like, oh, I really should be making money right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, you can't win either way.
Well, I can tell you, I mean, something just kind of on a personal level is...
let's do this. Wait, let's get personal, Dr. Bob.
I feel like we always do every time we do this. But yeah, I mean, last year, just, all the stress of working, full time all these years, and the stress of, the medical industry trying to bring me down and trying to come after us doctors that do vaccine exemption evaluations.
You mean that listen to parents?
Yeah, doctors that do vaccine safety evaluations and just all the stress of that kind of got to me. I basically decided I need to cut down my work hours, and so I'm basically part-time now in the office. I don't work the full, 40 hours a week. Cause I had to. I knew another couple years of trying to work full time while all this other stuff is going on in my life, and while I'm trying to help change the world as well, is too much. I mean, you can only do so much. I think, as you know, as you would probably agree, you can only do so much for so long. So I basically had to start working part-time, so that now I can have an afternoon off to sometimes do nothing. Sometimes I'll just read for fun. Sometimes Cheryl and I will go on long walks, or sometimes I'll come
At the beach?
Yeah, no, we do.
Holding
we do.
hands.
Yes. We do actually. It grosses our kids out.
That's so funny.
But no, sometimes I'll come podcast for the afternoon. But yeah, it basically, you know what? I think if you saw me, last year and the year before, you probably saw I was super stressed and overworked because I was doing all this, but also working full time in the office. And I felt like, I think you can only take so much, as a person.
So what you're saying is you basically were living like a mom. Is that what you're saying? You were essentially being a mom.
Well, I don't know. What's that like?
Overworked,
like? Right.
Can't possibly be everything to everyone. You get burned out, and you had somewhat of an experience with what it's like to have essentially like 2 full-time jobs all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Exactly. So
okay.
Yeah. I
just so 52% of our listeners right now are like, "Welcome to my world."
I appreciate the sympathy, unless I feel that the sympathy. No, it was tough. And we talked about, being self-employed. If you are self-employed and you go from full-time to part-time, so does your salary. So.
But in the end, isn't what we realize that happiness, life, balance, all this stuff has really just nothing to do with money. Like, we can continue to make more, have more clients, have this and that. And we really do sacrifice the ability to just be in the present and enjoy things right now, because you don't take all that with you, and all the things, you could die tomorrow. Like the things that you think, that you save for and that you earn all this money for, that might not ever come to pass. And so meanwhile, you're literally just blinders on through the life that you have now. And then that's not just you, that's everybody.
Right.
Everybody's chasing the dream of, once I get there, then I'll be happy. Yeah. Once I get enough, then I can relax. And the truth is, we really have to have that balance all the time happening. Like, I'm going to do some, but I'm going to take, like I was talking to my husband about this, about we should take a vacation, and the kids are a little bit older, to Europe and go for a couple months. And he's just like, there's no way that can happen. Like, there's that costs money. Yeah. No, it does.
Kidding. Yeah. We did a 3.5 week trip with the kids about, I don't know, 10 years ago or something. Yeah.
And so I said, well, okay, so it's going to be I'm a numbers person. If you know how much it's going to cost, then you plan for that. And over the next couple of years, you save for the amount that you're okay to lose, because you're going to be away from work during those couple months, losing money also. But it's an investment in life experience that you don't do every year. Yeah. This would be like a once in a lifetime opportunity. So you take the hit for a period of time, and that might be another 6 months that things are lower after that to get back to on track. But that's the compromise that you make, and that it can't always be about go. If I just get more, if I just work more hours. Essentially, we're missing out on the quality of life because we're forever searching, seeking that almighty dollar and what we think it's going to bring us. And what we're missing is the day-to-day actual present moment. Because one of the things I always tell my husband is, what would happen if you got a diagnosis that you had 2 months to live? The last thing you'd be doing, I can guarantee you, would be going to work or trying to make money. The thing you would want to do is spend time with your loved ones. That would be the most important thing. Yeah. And why doesn't that factor in? We act like we're guaranteed all this time, and we're really not. And so why doesn't that factor into our interactions now, that you find the balance, find the compromise? I've told you that. I've told you.
Yeah. And I had to, since I knew I would be doing this, this vaccine safety advocacy fight for the rest of my life. I knew I couldn't do that and be a full-time doctor the rest of my life as well. There's just no way.
Mm-hmm. It does require an immense amount of time.
Yeah. So I guess that's kind of, so I'm doing much better now this year. I'm able to, balance all this and be much happier and enjoy the important things in life. while I work, part-time in the office. But
Well, that's good.
thank you for asking.
Inquiring.
Yes,
Well, there you
yeah.
go. Wait. Before that.
Okay, yeah.
So I came across this. We like to bring things that are kind of like in the news or articles we found. Maybe we won't do a full podcast on it, but just something to bring to your attention. And I found this CDC article that is addressed to healthcare practitioners on how they can convince, or in their words, make a strong recommendation. Not a recommendation, but a strong recommendation for people to get the flu vaccine. And so recently there was that article in Australia coming out saying doctors are now potentially thinking of recommending 2 doses every single year for everyone.
Okay.
So a twice yearly dose, because people are still getting the flu. And I have personally researched the efficacy of the flu vaccine, and it showed immunity dropping before 90 days. So that's a 3-month period, meaning if you get it in October, it's not going to last by February.
Yeah.
Well, as we've mentioned, the flu season is getting longer and longer, and this sort of seems like a precursor to this twice-a-year flu. Now, you can imagine, I always say this is like the worst vaccine that I think that they make. That's on the childhood schedule.
As far as efficacy.
And then risk factor.
Yeah, right.
This is just not something you want to be taking every year, let alone taking it twice a year. We know we have studies that show you're at a 4 times increased risk of respiratory infections when you get consecutive yearly doses of the flu vaccine.
Right.
And we know that there's a chance that it actually makes you more susceptible to even influenza if you're getting 2 and 3 doses in years as well. This is in 2012 in Canada, one of those studies, and I forget the other one, but I'll post the links in the
Right. Yeah.
and I think we've mentioned about this before, but my point is this is not giving you any guarantee. You know that there's some risk, and it's already risky to be taking this every single year because it's decreasing your immune system protection for other things, as well as potentially making you more susceptible to influenza directly. So, knowing all that, doesn't that sound like a great vaccine for twice a year of the same thing? I mean, it's not working well enough once, so let's make you just have more of it to see if that will help. And of course, it's not going to help. The only thing that's going to help is their profits by requesting this. So we know there are a lot of people that are skeptical of the flu vaccine. There's about a 30% on average, 18 to 49-year-olds that get the flu vaccine every year. Only 30%, which means 70% are opting out. That's a big portion. They're going after that market. And so they have a lot of these articles and studies, that are how to convince your patients that you need the flu vaccine. So one of these that I came across, it's directly from the CDC website. And it says, make a strong flu vaccine recommendation. As a healthcare professional, your strong recommendation. So essentially that's coercion, right? You need to convince them to get it. This is not like your recommendation. Your strong recommendation. This is the only time I've seen them use that word. Your strong recommendation is a critical factor that affects whether your patients get an influenza vaccine. What they're saying is, if you aren't the one that tells them they need it, they're not going to get it. And so they are marketing to physicians. And this is the thing I noticed in the Senate hearings as well, when they talked about, censoring social media. They also talked about educating the doctors to make sure they're the only ones giving the information, because people will listen to them and they won't listen to anyone else outside of them. So it says, adults will not get it, basically. If your doctor tells you, will you get the vaccine or not? It's a critical factor. It says most adults believe vaccines are important, but they need a reminder from you to get vaccinated. They need a reminder. So it says, follow up with each patient during every appointment. Follow up every single appointment to make sure they're getting their flu vaccine. If they still haven't gotten it, it says repeat the recommendation to address their concerns. So they're saying every single time, I don't care if somebody comes in there because they have a bunion. Okay. They're telling you at that appointment for the bunion, make sure you make a strong recommendation for their flu vaccine.
Yeah. I was just talking to a friend. Who was this? That's going to bug me. A friend or maybe someone at the office.
With a bunion?
No, I guess
not with a bunion. Okay.
It was a patient. She was telling me that she took her husband to the ER because he had some sort of like a severe, severe abdominal pain or something. And they take them back to see them, and they offer him the flu shot while he's there for severe abdominal pain. And then the wife says, no, he doesn't want the flu shot. They took her out of the room and asked him again if he wants the flu shot. Sorry, you might have appendicitis, but hey, let's give you the flu shot.
Or you might have
now.
a serious infection.
Right. Let's give you the flu shot. You're right. They take every opportunity they can.
And so they created a little acronym, SHARE. SHARE, to make a strong flu vaccine recommendation. It says, it is necessary for some patients to receive a strong recommendation from their doctor. Listen how they say that. They say that like it's a scientific fact, that some patients need a strong recommendation. That they're saying they need a nudge. They need you to push them into the yes category because right now they're not there. This is all about how to manipulate your patients. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It says the CDC suggests that you use the SHARE method. And this is what it says is share. So share the reasons why this vaccine is right for you because of your age. So this is ageism here. You're getting older. So, and of course, age, they mean anybody like over 50, not even like 80 and older. We're talking about people that are still at an age to be healthy. Highlight positive experiences with this vaccine, your personal ones or in your practice, to reinforce the benefits and strengthen their confidence in this vaccine. Okay, so you're supposed to use your personal stories. Oh, I have a friend, Tommy, who got the vaccine this year, and he didn't get the flu, and everybody else got it. Like they want so this is they're telling you how to manipulate your patients. Share the reasons why they need this vaccine. Highlight your positive experiences with it because that's what people listen to, right? And then address their questions or their concerns, including side effects. It says in plain language, right? Because people aren't really smart enough to actually understand anything serious. But guess what they won't talk about in that addressing their questions? They're not going to actually talk about real side effects. They're not going to be talking about adverse reactions. It says to address vaccine effectiveness. Okay, so they're probably going to go right over the side effects into how this is safe and this is effective. Remember we always talk about safe and effective? It says right here, address their questions, including side effects, safety, and vaccine effectiveness. Okay, that was H and A. R is remind patients that influenza vaccines protect them and their loved ones from serious influenza illness and complications. Haven't we found with our data in California that actually it does not prevent complications? Yep. And then the last thing, E, explain the costs of getting influenza. This is where we increase the disease, right? Including serious health effects, time lost from missing work or family obligations, and financial costs. They want you as a doctor to sit down with a patient and tell them you need to get this vaccine. If they are not complying, they want you to talk about how it's safe and effective, how your personal friends all got it and they're fine, and how if you don't get it, you're going to get seriously injured, you're going to lose money from work, and you're going to miss out on things that you need to do, and it's going to give you a huge financial burden. How doomsday can you paint this when we know that like 94% of adults, actually, you said 6% of adults, or no, 3% of adults get the flu every year. Is it 3% or 6%?
Yeah, I think it was 3%.
6% of elderly, right?
Yeah.
So 3%, so 97% of adults are not getting the flu every year. But if you go to your doctor, they will absolutely make you feel like if you don't, you're done. You're done that winter. Like you might as well start signing your will and get it all ready to go. And then they even include a video from they pick a featured video of a doctor, and it says how she recommends the flu vaccine. They're trying to give you hints. Well, what I do when I have vaccine hesitant patients is this. Like nowhere in this are they saying maybe you don't need one.
Well, of course not. No.
But I mean, think about it. Does every single person need a flu vaccine? Is everybody in a risk category to where they could not handle influenza?
No, but because the recommendation is for every human over 6 months of age to get it, that becomes the norm, of course.
It's the norm, but I mean, it doesn't even make any sense.
Cheryl was telling me she saw a commercial for a pneumococcal vaccine for elderly. And they're taking a new angle, and one that you just mentioned, they were letting all the elderly grandparents see what they would miss out on as far as family time if they caught pneumonia. And what they found is the elderly weren't as afraid of being hospitalized or being sick they were afraid of missing Johnny's graduation or missing Sally's, piano recital.
So pulling at the heartstrings.
Yeah. The idea of an elderly person missing out on family time with their children and their grandchildren would be the worst possible thing. So of course I'm going to go out and get a pneumonia vaccine, and the same is true for the flu vaccine.
And this is kind of in that 50 to 64 range that they're really hyping this. And it says they have a little info sheet just on the 50 to 64. It says there are 63 million people in the United States between 50 and 64. That represents 1/5 of the U.S. population. Think about that. 63 million people. What do you think they're actually seeing when they see 63 million? 63 million doses
times 10 is $630 million.
I mean, they're
just
not
for that age group.
Right. So they're looking at this is another percent of the population that is not at 100%. We need to. This is just like any company that's advertising a food or some other product is like, where are we missing our market? Right. Where can we market? And so it says, 1/3 of adults 50 to 64 have an underlying medical condition that puts them at a higher risk for flu-related complications. Okay, can I just stop and say, why isn't the CDC and our other government health organizations, why aren't they addressing the fact that 1/3 of people 50 to 64 have underlying medical conditions? How about we cure the condition and they won't be at risk for flu? Why are we covering this up with a vaccine for the flu? Guess what? Those people all still have the medical condition. And I found in California's data, out of all of the lab tests, 20% only were influenza confirmed. That means 80% of all the people that ran tests, so whether that was urgent care or hospitals, 80% were not the flu.
Right.
So that means 80% are another respiratory illness that is serious enough to require medical treatment. So if you get the flu vaccine, you're not going to be covered for the other 80% anyway of other things that are not influenza.
Right.
And so not only do you have that, but you've got this condition that's making you weaker for those things.
Yeah. So
how about,
fix that. Yeah. Well, there's a whole conspiracy. It's kind of a conspiracy. It's a theory. It's not a conspiracy theory because I think it's a very good theory. It's just the idea that our modern American health system is completely failing us as a people. Completely failing us. We've gone wrong in the areas of nutrition, exercise, bad habits, smoking and alcohol consumption, but just our modern medical system, it is not creating healthier people.
No, it's not even trying to address health.
Right. So you're totally right. When you read that, 1/3 of elderly people have a chronic health condition. They just that's almost the new norm.
It's the new norm.
And almost as if because we can't change that, we can now just give everyone the flu shot. You're right. Let's investigate why everyone's immune systems are totally messed up and why everyone's cardiovascular, systems and intestinal systems.
And diabetes and things like that are in that age group.
Right. And we know, basically this younger generation knows, and I guess this, middle-aged generation that I'm pointing to myself at, we now know that it all comes down to raising your kids with a completely natural, healthy immune system, natural nutrition, minimal, exposure to environmental chemicals and toxins, healthy eating, going outside and playing.
Organic food.
Right. And if you are living that lifestyle, you are not going to be one of those elderly with, 1/3, with a chronic health condition. And that idea, unfortunately, while it's a great and wonderful idea to the American public, that idea scares the American medical community.
Of course.
Because I was just thinking the other day, what would happen if we completely solved allergic disorders? And we realized, okay, we now know how to completely prevent almost everyone from getting allergies. Well, the entire, allergy branch of medical specialties is out of business. If we cure diabetes, and endocrinology is out of business. If we figure out how to keep people from having heart attacks, cardiology is out of business. And we essentially know how to prevent all that by just simply complete healthy eating.
A different approach, a different approach to health.
Right. But that scares, the American medical system. And I don't know, I guess, it's funny as a doctor, my favorite day is spent seeing, doing 10 checkups on kids that literally did not need their checkup. I see them. I make sure everything's perfectly healthy. They're completely fine. The parents are raising their kids natural and they're growing well and everything's great. And so I look at them thoroughly, do complete exams. I answer questions. I make sure they're growing well. We talk about development and everything. So I make sure they're healthy. But in essence, those 10 checkups, the outcome is, there's no health problems. Everything's great. So I'm sure, the parents appreciate the service and they're glad they're there because then they get confirmation of kind of what they already knew. But how great is that to be able to see healthy kids and not have to solve any medical problems and how, gosh, I mean, when I have a day where it's filled with even like one or two complicated medical problems, of course, I go through it and I help the families, but I think for me, it's a lot more draining. And I just love the days where everyone's perfectly healthy. And I wish all families could enjoy that aspect of
ideally
health.
Your
and
job
they can if they know how to raise their kids that way.
You want to make it so people don't have to see you.
Right.
That's the goal, right? People think of, well, if that's my practice, like I don't want people to be totally healthy or they won't need me, but that's not actually true because there still will be a need. There's always new babies born. There's always all of that. You, as a healthcare practitioner, you should absolutely be wanting your patients to not need you, to be healthy enough to not have problems and complications to seek medical treatment. They should essentially, you want them to be healthy from the inside out. And this is like a whole body approach that has to start in infancy, not to say that it can't, you can always get better and you can always make changes of patterns. But this has to start with the way that we are being educated. And I had a conversation with some moms the other day about this, that our well visit appointments should be teaching us how to keep our children healthy and to build their immune system. Our well visit appointments should not be vaccination appointments. They should be educating us as parents. Like, hey, here's the deal. This is the deal with fevers. This is the deal with sugar and reducing the sugar and how it can benefit your child. Here's a whole packet that we have for you on a little guide to how to raise your healthy child. Mm-hmm. And to make you feel empowered as a parent, because we only vaccinate for a handful of things. There are so many other things that come around that we don't vaccinate for. And we have become so numbed to the idea that vaccination makes us healthy, but it doesn't make you healthy. It may prevent certain particular diseases in you, but it does not make you healthier. In some cases, it reduces and suppresses your immune system, making you more likely.
Right, as we found out with the whooping cough vaccine.
To get something else. And so I am just bewildered at why we can't, as a country, come together. So our obesity rate for this country is 30%.
Jeez. Okay,
it is the highest.
I'm one of those 30%.
Stop it.
No. If you look at the CDC guidelines,
really?
Well, you look at your height versus weight.
But height and weight is different than body mass index. That's totally different.
If you look at your BMI,
So, because I was looking through these global infant mortality rates and came across this article about in Korea, their obesity rate is 3% for the country, and ours is 30%. Every single state in our nation is higher than any other country in this world. For like every state, there's not a single state that has a lower rate than other countries. Like we are the highest anywhere, and when you think of 30%, that's extremely high. So shouldn't the CDC be getting together with other government organizations like the AAP? Shouldn't they be, instead of focusing on all the vaccines we can give you, shouldn't they be focusing on ways to make people inherently healthier so that they can prevent disease, reduce complications, and also allow you a better quality of life later in life? So remember the Japan podcast we did? They talked about them being the number one country in health and in long quality of life health, so that when you're going to be 80, you still feel pretty good at 80. You're not having this debilitating condition at 80, because it's not just the number of your age when you die. It's about the quality of life that you have. And if you're getting diabetes, you're getting these other conditions, then you're living from 50 years old to 85 with a condition that is impairing your ability to live well. And you don't see this kind of stuff on NBC, CBS, NPR, CNN. What they do instead is talk about the outbreaks and the exemptions and the vaccines, and instead they're missing the boat completely on what we need to focus on. But yet they write these packets of how to manipulate people to get a vaccine instead of here's what you should do to help that 50 to 60-year-old. have a better and more healthy life.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, again, more young people are going to start asking these questions. Why are we all so unhealthy? And how can I raise my children differently in a way that really matters for their entire lifetime? And I think that's what we are going to start focusing on maybe more in future talks and things that we're going to
one of our next groups of episodes. Right. We're going to talk about some immune system building.
Maybe give like a little primer on that. But it's funny. So what is today's topic?
Well,
anyway?
This is going to be long anyway. The FDA and the media. Yeah. We'll continue on this instead of making it a separate podcast. I think people share articles with me all the time. Oh, and can I also say, can I talk? Can I also say that. What was I going to say, I get I get a lot of messages. I get a lot of people and I have so many friend requests. It's over 1,000 now.
Jeez.
I want to say that I go through really slowly on friend requests. Please don't take it personally if I don't accept you right away. I'm really struggling with the idea of how many people I sort of let into my personal world. I allow my vaccine posts and informed consent posts to be public so people can follow. But I also get a lot of messages, and I also see a lot of people copying the stuff that I say as their own words. I've seen that happen. So, just a personal request from me, because I do put a lot of time into this, please just either tag me, let people know where it came from, and that's for two reasons. For one, there's always a lot of data behind what I put out. So if you just copy this one section and people have questions of where'd you get that from or what's that in relation to, you're not going to be able to necessarily answer that because I'm the one that looked through the issue thoroughly. So you want to be able to give them access to the post that has screenshots and links and all the things below in comments. So that's the first reason. And the second reason is I put a lot of myself into this. And these are my own words. Like I'm talking like actual quotes of like a full-on 3 paragraphs I do, and somebody just posts it as theirs, never says anything about where it came from. And you've got other people going, oh, awesome. Can you share this? I love what you're saying. And it's kind of a weird thing to see somebody do that. So I love the fact that people feel encouraged by what I write and they want to share it. I love it. Please just, give credit to where it came from for the 2 reasons that I said, because I do put a lot of myself into this and I would really appreciate that. But also don't be offended if I don't accept your friend request. And I get a lot of messages of people asking me to go comment on their thread to back them up on something. I just don't have the time to do that.
Right.
And you probably get that too. I just want to say, it's nothing personal. Please don't think, I'm being rude, but I just do not have the time. Or somebody will ask me, do you have all your links on autism? Like, no, I don't store any of this stuff in files. I still am a full-time mom to 2 little kids all the time. And I do this in addition to that. It's impossible for me to keep up with stuff like that. So please keep requests something that's reasonable. If you want to share an article like this kind of thing where somebody sends, hey, I don't know if you've seen this, but I thought you might want a podcast about it, or it's interesting. I can totally appreciate that. And I may or may not be able to respond to you, but I do see everything. So it gets a little overwhelming for me. I get a little bit inundated. But anyway, this article about the FDA. Okay, so it's called How the FDA Manipulates the Media. Okay, so this is in Scientific American. And this is actually in 2016, so this is not brand new, but it's totally relative to what we're talking about here. So this is, it says, the title, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration has been arm-twisting journalists into relinquishing their reportorial independence, our investigation reveals. Other institutions are following suit. It says the deal was this: NPR, along with a select group of media outlets, would get a briefing about an upcoming announcement by the FDA a day before anyone else. But in exchange for that scoop, NPR would have to abandon its independence, its reportorial independence. The FDA would dictate whom NPR's reporter could and couldn't interview. Think about that. That is crazy, right? And so it says NPR took the deal. And later that day, the reporters came, including CBS, NBC, CNN, The Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal. They showed up. They all took the deal. Okay. And they, every single journalist agreed to ask any questions of sources, had agreed not to ask any questions of sources that were not approved by the government. So, and this is called a close hold embargo is the term. But when we think of journalism, we think of fair reporting, right? The idea of journalism is you are supposed to just give the facts and let people come to their own conclusions. But what this is saying is, in order to get the scoop, they made a deal behind closed doors to only handpick who the sources could be, and the questions all had to sort of be approved. And that means they were not going to be interviewing somebody on the other side of this issue. Anything that does not paint the FDA in a good light. Okay, so...
Right. Well, the press is always, it's called like the fourth branch of government. They're originally designed, and the original purpose was to objectively be free, the free press to find the truth and seek the truth and report the truth.
And to call people out when they were doing wrong.
And is basically a check and balance on the government. Right. That's why it's the fourth branch of the government. That was the original intent of the press.
And actually, Robert Kennedy talked about that in his thing with Connecticut too, because he was addressing press questions. And he said, the press needs to be a free press. We need to be able to debate these issues. It's absolutely crucial. And this is the same idea. This is a system of checks and balances. And when you are completely filtered and censored by the media, or the media is censored, and so therefore the public gets censored information, you are literally halting a true conversation, because there are not two sides to the story. And that's the entire reason we do this. We do this because we're trying to give you the other side. So it might seem, like you mentioned in a much earlier podcast, this might seem one-sided, but it's not actually one-sided. This is just the side that's never told. Right. And so that's the side we focus on because it's never told. Not that this is... just the only side of any argument. You have a right to see both sides. We know the side you've already been shown, and so we're showing the other side. So this is called a close hold embargo. It says it's a tool used by scientific and government agencies. CDC. I'm so sorry. Something in my throat. I'm so sorry, you guys. That's really unprofessional. It says to control the behavior of the science press. So we know that there's even another level of journalism that deals specifically with health and science issues. And so this is controlling them. And it says, the funny thing is, it says the FDA assures the public it's committed to transparency, but documents show privately that the agency denies reporters access to things and even deceives them with half-truths. And so that's the opposite of transparency, obviously. And it says what's so sad about this is journalists are supposed to be keeping an eye on those institutions.
Right.
They're the ones like what you just said. And it says, I like this quote, it says, the watchdogs are being turned into lapdogs. I mean, that's kind of an interesting way to look at it, but it's true. But this is a backroom deal between journalists and the people and stories that they cover and their sources. And it says a large proportion of science and health stories are a product of these embargoes. You just don't realize it because this is happening behind the scenes. And the last thing, you can go read this article yourself. It's actually kind of long.
Is that a separate article than the title you originally said?
Same one.
Okay. All right.
It's just kind of long. But it says there's a thing called the Association of Healthcare Journalists, and whoever was quoted here, Megan Scott, which I'm a member. And she says, publicly objected to the close hold embargo, saying it would be a serious obstacle to good journalism. Reporters who want to be competitive on a story will have to agree to write only what the FDA wants to tell the world without analysis or outside commentary. I mean, isn't that like everything that we're saying is about the need for transparency and honesty, and the fact that we can't. So now we're being censored on social media, but before that censorship, there's already another censorship happening, and that's the stuff that you get. So it's already been happening, and again, Robert Kennedy, I go back to him, but he mentioned how a friend of his that owns a news network basically said 70% of our advertising is coming from pharmaceutical companies. They will not be okay with me letting you on this show. So even if I agree with what you're saying, even if I think you have a right to talk about protecting kids by taking out heavy metals and making sure things are safe, even if that is a public health, that's a public health crisis in itself where the public has a right to know, they still won't do it. And they won't do it because of who their advertisers are. So things are already being censored as far as how the government is painted, the light that the vaccine program is painted in, and then now they're censoring just the average person who wants to talk about it on social media. But again, it's called, this article is called... How the FDA Manipulates the Media. And it was in the Scientific American. This is October 1st, 2016. And, even though this is talking about the FDA, obviously the FDA oversees the CDC, right? They're connected, or not, maybe not oversees directly, but they are in direct connection with them as it relates to...
Right. They're just part of the, they're part of the... What I call
sister organization?
Yeah, maybe? It's like a triangle of the CDC, FDA, and pharma, the pharmaceutical
a very
labs.
cozy triangle.
Yeah, exactly.
But I thought it was an interesting article to check out. So, I mean, we talked about Coca-Cola and the conflicts of interest as it relates to the CDC directly.
Right.
These kinds of topics, while it doesn't seem to be directly related to vaccines, you can see when you step back, you can really see how this is happening all the time with all of it.
Yeah.
And we're not getting the whole story.
Yeah. And something that's kind of related that Cheryl brought to my attention, and this is kind of timely. You've heard about the couple of Boeing plane crashes that we've had over this year. Like in the last 6 months, there have been 2 Boeing plane crashes, and you wonder, well, what does that have to do with the vaccine conversation? And
wait, did you just tell me about this? Because somebody just told me about this a couple days ago. That is so funny.
I don't know if I did. I don't think I did. So I'm going to tell this story, and then we can talk about the parallels, because the parallels are pretty fantastic. So this was the article is called "What We Learned About the FAA," the Federal Aviation Administration, and Boeing's cozy relationship from a damning report. And this was by Dylan Scott. It was March 19th, so just recently. And it was an article, I think from the Seattle Times. So basically, the Seattle Times did this investigation. They found that Boeing, who makes airplanes, and the FAA, who is basically like the FDA but for airplanes, right? So instead of drugs, they manage airplanes. They cut corners to get the 737 MAX into service before the deadly crashes. So essentially, in case you didn't know, there were 2 Boeing 737 MAX planes that crashed over the last 6 months. And they both crashed because of this malfunction that went wrong with the computerized autopilot system. And essentially, something would activate that would cause the flaps to make the plane's nose dive down, go down suddenly, without the pilots being aware of it, and without the pilots being able to control it. And that's what essentially caused these 2 crashes.
And this is happening in other countries as well.
Right. In fact, the 2 crashes were in other countries.
I think one of them was Vietnam.
Right. But the FAA helps manage worldwide aviation. It's not just American. So basically it says, in a hurry to finish the design and the manufacture of the Boeing 737 MAX and to get the plane to the runway, both Boeing and the FAA appear to have rushed and cut corners, including not mentioning to pilots that they had installed a new flight control system on the updated aircraft. And this was all done by a Seattle Times investigation by Dominic Gates, according to this article. The company's safety analysis understated what the potential problems could be. The company's own safety analysis. So Boeing did their own safety analysis. They understated the risks. After the first crash, the FAA learned what caused it. They learned that the pilot's flight control system could adjust the horizontal tail, pushing the nose down. So the FAA learned what was wrong after the first crash. Then there was a second crash like 6 months later. The 2 crashes killed over 300, almost 350 people. Then finally, other countries decided to ground this aircraft, not allowed to fly anymore. But other countries made this decision before the American FAA would make the decision. And everyone, the FAA was very slow to decide they should ground these aircrafts. According to this investigation, the FAA increasingly delegated inspections and other safety checks back to the company itself, back to Boeing. So instead of the FAA doing all the safety studies and safety checks, they put a lot of that back onto Boeing themselves. And then Boeing could choose which one of their employees could do the critical work with the FAA to make sure the planes are safe to fly. The Department of Transportation, which is an American department different from the FAA, is now investigating the FAA for this, and there's a grand jury and subpoenas. But what's interesting is Boeing wanted to keep costs down in implementing this new aircraft. Part of the cost savings was that Boeing made a crucial decision not to train pilots on the new flight control systems, and not to even mention that this new flight control system was there, not to mention it in the safety manuals. And the decision to do this was made as a cost-saving measure. Well, let's see. And that was a key selling point for the jet as well. So finally, the crash raises difficult questions about the Boeing FAA cozy relationships. One of the safety engineers from the FAA said there was constant pressure in our jobs to reevaluate our initial safety findings. Even after we had reassessed the safety, there was continued discussion by our management about delegating even more of these safety items back to Boeing instead of us at the FAA doing these ourselves.
Plus, they basically wanted a different outcome. They want, do this study again and come out with a different outcome, please.
Right. And there wasn't a complete and proper review of the documents. And it said the FAA engineer, review was rushed to reach certain certification dates. So the FAA has regulated aircraft manufacturers like this way for years, but the recent crashes have brought concerns. So there's a culture of coziness between the FAA and Boeing and other aircraft manufacturers. A representative, a congressman, actually gave repeated warnings over many years about these issues. And let's see. They end with supervisors have not always supported employee efforts to hold Boeing accountable. So it basically ends with lawmakers have promised to look into the crash and the circumstances that led to it. A federal grand jury is reportedly taking up the case. More than 300 people are dead, and answers will be demanded to explain how a system with such a strong reputation for safety may have allowed such tragedies to happen. So when Cheryl told me about the story and I read it, I mean, the parallels are just beyond amazing. First of all, we have the Boeing making the aircraft and doing their own safety regulation studies. That is exactly like our vaccine manufacturers, of course. That'd be the first parallel. And yet it's interesting that everyone is up in arms over this, yet everyone lets the vaccine manufacturer system completely exist the way it is. No one cares that they're doing all their own safety research.
And you think 300 people die and nobody hears, but nobody's really hearing about, I mean, it's hearing about it, but nobody's really, I'm sure they would have loved to keep this quiet, right? And then you've got nobody dying of measles and there's this like humongous uproar. Right. If you want to talk about saving lives, here was an opportunity to save 350 lives. There haven't been 350 deaths of measles in decades. So I always find that funny. Yeah. But also the idea that industry and corporations and regulatory agencies have these cozy relationships. That's obviously the other parallel.
Exactly. So it's not, everyone talks about the CDC and the FDA and manufacturers being cozy, but here we have, the FAA and airplane manufacturers being cozy. I wonder, are there any like large industries that are not cozy with the regulating body and government?
Money talks. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Right. Money. Like, you have to be cozy. Remember the Coca-Cola thing with the World Health Organization? You need to be cozy with the people who could either allow you to get away with a little bit more or promote you even a little bit. That's the ultimate when it comes to your profits is getting the people who could potentially oversee you on your side. And they can turn a blind eye if they need to. Right. I mean, this has been happening for decades, multiple decades.
One of my favorite parallels in this story is basically Boeing created this new flight control system, and they decided not to train any of the pilots on its use because that would cost more money. vaccine manufacturers don't give any training to doctors on how to recognize vaccine reactions, what to do when something goes wrong. In fact, the manufacturers put that information in the package inserts. Right. It's there in writing, but they don't make no effort to train doctors. Medical schools don't train doctors. There's no it costs a lot of money to put doctors through all these training programs to tell them what to watch out for. And how to deal with the vaccine reactions. What happens when something goes wrong?
Them, though. So not just what happens once it goes wrong. How about how to know if something has gone wrong?
Right. And here the Boeing decided not to train pilots on the new use of this new flight control system. Then something went wrong. 6 months ago, a plane crashed. 187 something people died. At that point, they figured out what went wrong, and still they would not train pilots on what went wrong and what to do.
They could have prevented the second crash.
Right, they could have prevented the second crash. So when something goes wrong with a vaccine, they when they start getting reports of fatal reactions, people start crashing from getting a vaccine. And we get these VAERS reports. Does the CDC actively put out those warnings to doctors? No, not at all. Do the manufacturers put out warnings? No, they don't until tons of people die. Once enough people die, it becomes like a black box warning, or it becomes like a severe enough problem. They put it in there, but they don't, quote, train the new doctors. They train the doctors on what to do about this. They just
pretend it doesn't exist.
They don't tell them. Right. And so I found that parallel interesting. But then there's another. Oh yeah. So Cheryl was telling me there was a third almost crash, which was in the news, where a third plane had the same malfunction. The nose went down. The plane started to crash, and there was an extra pilot with them that day, riding along, just because he wasn't the main pilot, but he was just there riding along. He knew what went wrong. He had been told. He kind of had somehow heard or been trained, this new flight control system can make the nose dive, and here's how you fix it. So he actually saved the plane. He told the pilots what to do.
Yeah.
So
imagine that.
Yeah. Imagine a professional being trained what can go wrong with this process, and then recognizing when it goes wrong and fixing it. That sounds like doctors who are
finding a solution.
Right. Who are recognizing vaccine reactions, recognizing when there's risk, and then trying to educate others on what to do about it, how to save people from those risks.
I remember it was actually my friend Sandy that told me about this. She told me we went on a walk last week, and she mentioned this exact article. I've not seen anything about this. Hi, Sandy. I've not seen anything about this online myself, but she actually brought this same story, and we talked about it for a while. And it's interesting, and there are a lot of parallels. And this whole idea of your government's going to tell you, of course they're going to tell you. You realize there's so much stuff that is kept, behind the scenes or under wraps, things that you just don't know are happening and are putting people at risk. There's no transparency. Please, do not convince yourself that the CDC, the government, anybody is being completely transparent with you about anything as it relates to health, your potential risk and dangers and stuff. No way. The only time this stuff comes out is when somebody's been harmed.
Right, and they
lots of people.
Right, and they say here repeated warnings have been issued over the years about the relationship between the FAA and Boeing specifically. Repeated warnings, and government officials have put out warnings about this, and they've done the same with the vaccine safety. There are some congressmen that are speaking out about vaccine safety. Our own government has issued 2 warning reports to the FDA and the CDC about collusion and cooperation and conflicts of interest between pharma and the CDC and between pharma and FDA. The government is putting out warnings, but then nothing happens. Nothing happens until a lot of people are hurt.
Right.
And
then in one particular case, people can continue to be hurt and nothing happens at all.
Right.
Which is what we see
and so now all these planes are grounded. All right. Now these planes are grounded worldwide. Yeah. But when there's a problem with vaccines, even a problem that we know is going to cause some fatalities, I guess the government just stays silent, and the
I mean, think
FDA
about
stays silent.
remember the romaine lettuce gate, where they basically took out all for just even, I don't even remember how many cases there were, and I don't even think there were. It's not like there were thousands of fatalities. They literally took it off everywhere. It was this massive thing, and you're thinking, and they put out warnings that it was on the news, and then you see problems happening with kids with vaccines not on the news, no warnings, and never taken off because it will. See, the romaine industry isn't strong enough to be upset about their product looking poorly. And so they don't want people to lose faith in the vaccine program. And so any chink in the armor, as they say, reduces confidence in the program. And so even if they are straight up lying and continuing to hurt people, they will try to keep the narrative exactly as is. But I think this conflict of interest stuff that we bring to the table on this issue is crucial.
Right.
Because the integrity of the institutions that you think are there to protect you, you have to understand if that integrity is not there, then the information that they are giving you is also not full of integrity. And so whenever somebody says, I only pay attention to CDC links, well, if you realize the CDC is not full of integrity, then the information they are giving you is not full of integrity. It doesn't mean that it's going to be 100% truthful because they're not being 100% truthful. And so it's important to understand why you can't only look there.
Right. And I think you, the consumer of medical care, you have to do your own research because sometimes there are conflicts of interest in the government body that's supposed to be doing the research for you, and the manufacturers that are supposed to be making safe products. I mean, I'm sure airplanes are safe and effective, right? But not always. And when something goes wrong,
but you're not forced to take the flight, though. So there's the difference, right?
Yeah,
you can opt out of flying all you want.
Yeah. Anyway, so thanks for tuning into this episode. This was kind of a random, what's going on out there in the world
we
right now.
We like to be random
episode.
sometimes.
But we're I think our next episode is kind of back to sort of the basics of the vaccine conversation and the vaccine decision for parents and how you face this issue in your doctor's office.
Can't wait.
I know. That's I've been looking forward to this episode.
I know, we've been postponing this one for every time.
It was like the bottom of the list every time we got together. So we are finally going to do it. But anyway.
If we have time.
We do. I'm ending this episode right now. Well, don't forget to rate and review us, you guys.
Just talk double time like you can press on the podcast. Just talk double time from here to the end of it to end it faster. Okay, thank you so much. Thanks again, everybody. Like the Micro Machines guy.
Yeah, don't forget to sign up for our email list on immunityeducationgroup.org.
And the website, IG. Facebook page, review, rate. Thank you so much. I actually played to get those sources. I played it on double because you told me that was an option.
Yeah, cool.
And I was like, oh my God, I'm talking so fast. Then I forgot I had it on double when I played it again. I was like, why am I talking so fast? I was like, oh, thank God. Because I've been told I talk a little bit quickly.
And I'm very slow.
And I'm very fast.
Very slow.
You're the 0.5 speed. Okay, that's enough.
Right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys. See you next time.
The information in this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. It is not intended as medical advice. Always consult your healthcare professional for information on vaccines and infectious diseases.